Have you ever stopped to think that maybe our oldest stories, even the Bible, are hiding something, well, extraordinary? What if all those tales of angels and divine miracles weren't just miracles? What if they were actually descriptions of advanced technology witnessed by people who could only explain it all as an act of God? It's a pretty wild idea, I know, but it's also fascinating. So let's dive in. So, right off the bat, let's be clear. Seeing weird stuff in the sky is not a modern thing. Not at all. Long before we ever dreamed of flight, people were looking up and seeing things they couldn't explain. Take this, for example. We're talking 1561 in Nuremberg, Germany. A news bulletin back then, described what they called an aerial battle, an event so wild and so significant they made sure to write it down for everyone to remember. And that right there, that raises the huge question we're going to tackle. When our ancestors looked up and saw something that just blew their minds, were they witnessing a sign from God, a genuine miracle, or were they trying their absolute best to describe something else entirely? Okay, so to even begin to answer that, we've got to look at some of our oldest, most sacred texts, but through a completely different lens. This is really the heart of it, the core idea we're exploring. It's often called the ancient contact theory, and the concept is actually pretty simple. Just imagine for a second, you live thousands of years ago. You see some kind of craft come down from the sky. How in the world do you describe that? You don't have words like rocket or spaceship or alien, so what do? You reach for the only words you do have, the language of the divine. You talk about angels, gods, and, chariots of fire. All right, let's get into the specifics. We're going to look at some really compelling examples right from the Bible and see how you can read them in two totally different ways. First on the list, the famous story of the prophet Elijah's ascension. And the text here is super specific. It says a chariot of fire with horses of fire shows up, separates him from his apprentice, and then bam, a whirlwind whisks him up into the heavens. So here's where it gets interesting. It's all about interpretation, right? The traditional theological view says this is a divine miracle, plain and simple. But if you put on that other lens we talked about, could that chariot of fire be, say, a glowing technological vehicle? Could the horses of fire be a way to describe its powerful energy source? And that whirlwind, could that just be the effect of a powerful propulsion system kicking in? Okay, now we're going to get into what is honestly one of the most bizarre and detailed accounts in the entire Bible. Ezekiel's vision. Listen to this description. He talks about a fiery cloud, something that looks like polished metal, four beings that have a human-like shape, and then he gets to these incredibly strange wheels. And just like before, we've got two roads you can go down. Theologically, it's a symbolic vision of God's power and glory. But the technological reading? Wow, it's pretty compelling. Could polished metal be the fuselage of a craft? The beings, maybe they're occupants in some kind of suits. And those wheels within wheels, is it possible that's just the best way an ancient person could describe some kind of advanced multidirectional propulsion system? It makes you think, right? And then you have the pillar of cloud and fire that guided the Israelites out of Egypt. And the text is really clear on this. This wasn't some random weather event. This thing actively led them. When they moved, it moved. When they stopped, it stopped. It was intelligent. And this one really shows the divide perfectly. Was it a purely spiritual manifestation of God's presence, or was it a physical craft? The alternative reading suggests the pillar of cloud by day was some kind of cloaking system or atmospheric effect, and the pillar of fire at night, well, that was the glow from its propulsion system. Okay, but here's the thing. This isn't just a biblical phenomenon, not by a long shot. When you start looking at other ancient cultures all around the globe, a really fascinating pattern starts to emerge. So in ancient Hindu texts, like the Mahabharata, you find these incredibly detailed descriptions of flying machines called Vimanas. Then you go to Peru, and you see the Nazca lines with that giant figure that looks, it looks uncannily like an astronaut waving at the sky. In Egypt, gods are constantly shown with these winged solar discs. And get this, in Italy, there are prehistoric rock carvings that look for all the world like figures wearing helmets and suits. These kinds of stories are literally everywhere. So let's just entertain this idea for a minute. If there was some kind of ancient intervention, well, that opens up a whole new can of worms, and it leads to some really, really big questions. And the first, most obvious question is just, why? What was the point of it all? If some advanced intelligence was interacting with early humanity, what did they want? What was their goal? Now look, the theories here are all over the map, and it's all speculation. But people have ideas. Maybe they were trying to guide our moral development. Maybe we were just part of some huge cosmic experiment. Or maybe they were protecting us from ourselves, from self-destruction. Some theories go even further, suggesting genetic manipulation or that this was all part of a long-term plan to prepare us for open contact someday. And of course, that brings us to the biggest counterargument, the one you always hear. Okay, fine. If they were here so openly back then, where are they now? Why are they hiding? Why don't they just, land on the White House lawn and say hello? It's a fair question, and there are a few potential answers on the table. One idea is that they have some kind of non-interference directive, like in Star Trek, right? They believe we need to figure things out on our own. Or maybe their intervention hasn't stopped. It's just become way more subtle, happening in ways we can't even pick up on. Or maybe they're just waiting for us to grow up a little, to reach a certain level of maturity before they make their big reveal. All right, for this last part, let's pull the camera way, way back. Let's think about what all of this could mean from a bigger, more philosophical perspective. And this, for me, is the question that really sticks with you. If it's true, if our ancestors really did mistake advanced tech for gods, then what are we misunderstanding about the universe today? What fundamental truth about reality are we getting completely wrong right now? Because maybe, just maybe, that line we draw between divine and technological isn't as solid as we think. This kind of leads into a really cool philosophical idea called pantheism, and the core belief is pretty simple. The universe itself is God. Everything that exists is just one part of a single, all-encompassing, living, cosmic being. And if you look at it that way, well, those ancient encounters might not have been with gods from heaven or aliens from another planet, at least not in the way we picture them. Maybe they were interactions with a cosmic consciousness that we are all part of. We're like cells in a giant body, involved in a purpose so grand that we can barely even begin to wrap our heads around it. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. In the end, whether you believe these ancient stories are about aliens or angels, diving back into them does one amazing thing. It forces us to really think about our place in the universe. It makes you wonder, is our entire human story just one tiny chapter in a cosmic novel that's billions of years old and spans entire galaxies? What do you think?